Have you ever heard the saying, humans by nature are creatures of habit, and up to 45% of the things we do on a daily basis are habitual, meaning we don't even think about it. That's what we're going to be talking about this week, habits. If you don't already know us, my name is Abdul, I'm joined with Ams. We're both co-founders of Peerr and junior doctors in London. So Ams, habits. What is a habit?
So a habit is something that you do daily without really thinking about it. So it's like brushing our teeth in the morning, right? You wake up, you don't really have to make the decision to brush your teeth. It's something that you do before you drink coffee, tea, whatever, which isn't actually the ideal advice from dentists, I hear. Is that true? Is that true?
I have no idea, but I have bad oral hygiene. And you know what? I don't even brush twice a day. I only brush once in the morning with a manual one.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Manual toothbrush as well?
Electric one.
Bro, come on, man. You have to upgrade, man. All right. So, so a habit is something that you do without really thinking. It's a decision that you make without even really thinking about it. You just do it. And usually it's quite important. And it makes you who you are, I find. Most of the habits that you have form who you are. So if you're a person who usually always does this, always speaks like that, always makes decisions like that, it forms a crucial part of who you are. So habits are actually important, and it's important that we're aware of our habits, what habits we form, and how to basically break down bad habits. Why do we have habits though? Why do we have habits?
So I did a bit of reading around this, and it's quite interesting actually. So habits, believe it or not, are essential for survival. We need habits to survive. And the reason for that is basically when you have to consciously think of every decision you make and weigh up the pros and cons, right? You're wasting valuable energy, valuable cognition trying to figure it all out. So what habits are, it allows you to do things automatically so your brain can focus on other higher level functions that are more important for survival. Think about, every time you go to the toilet and you come out and having to consciously think, should I wash my hands or not? Think of how much time, effort and energy that requires, right? So we as humans, we try to free up as much space in our brains to make the decisions that really matter, the ones that are important for survival.
Yeah. So when we're talking about habits, right, we're talking less so much about survival, right? We don't really think about survival straight away. When we think about habits, we're thinking of, usually anyone who's watching this, they're thinking of success in something, right? But how does habit fit in with success? How does it really fit in that area?
So there's obviously, you're right. So there's two ways of seeing habits. There's core habits, right? Things you wake up in the morning, you do without thinking twice. Things you've done for years since you were a child, perhaps. Yeah. And then the habits that are a bit more topical are like good habits and bad habits, right? The popular habit of waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning, or healthy eating and exercising, right? That's the habit that people are more interested about learning. So habits are, like you said, they make you, they're part of your personality, they're part of the way you live your life, right? So let's talk about bad habits first, right? So in your day-to-day, in your career, in your life, in your entrepreneurship, what do you think are bad habits that you have?
So some people can say it's a good habit, some people can say it's a bad habit, right? Yeah, but I think it's a bad habit. I've developed almost a dependency on coffee, right? Yeah. My thing is that I wake up and the first thing I crave is coffee. I have to run downstairs, and only after I've had, literally, I think it doesn't even matter if it's caffeinated or not now, right? I just have to be able to taste coffee in my mouth in the morning for me to become awake, right? And I find that, say one day we haven't got milk in the house, or it's gone out a day, or the coffee's run out and I haven't bought another a set of coffees, I find that I really struggle to concentrate and work. So it's a dependency that's created by that. So that's why now I really make sure I've always got coffee. I do enjoy coffee. It's one of the things that I do love, but I don't enjoy this dependency that I've developed. Like, in the month of Ramadan when we were fasting, the first day, the caffeine withdrawal, I was feeling nauseated. I couldn't concentrate. I was dizzy. I felt like I couldn't wake up. So that's a really strong drawback of the dependency I developed. What about you?
So bad habit, toxic, whatever you call it. So I think a big one for me is, as soon as I have any spare time or I'm bored, I straight away take my phone out, jump onto social media, and I'm endlessly scrolling, right? Yeah. That necessarily isn't a bad habit. The bad habit is, as soon as I go on there, I spend a long time, right? So I went there because I'm bored, and I end up missing lots of important things, and I'm just bare clued up about it, right? So this is a big, big bad habit. So when I go to the toilet, right, I don't know if you take your phone in there.
Yeah.
I take my phone in there, right?
Spend an hour in there.
And I'm just chilling there forever. It's on my phone, right? Because it's addictive. Social media is mad addictive, right? And you're chilling there, right? And it's not good. Even from a hygiene perspective, I live in a house with other people, like my brothers and sisters. So I'm just stuck there and everyone's just like, but I'm so engrossed in it.
Yeah.
Like, you're like stuck in the toilet. Do you know what I mean?
That's on the toilet in your phone.
You know what I mean? That's a big bad habit, right?
Yeah.
The other bad habit my wife reminded me the other day, is salt. So every time I eat, I automatically put salt on it without even tasting it. And it's a habit. In my head, I've associated, okay, if I don't put salt on it, it's not going to be salty enough, or it's not going to be right. That is a very, very bad habit. You know, as medics, we know it's a risk factor for blood pressure, whatever, right? Do you have anything like that?
So I developed that recently. So I developed that from my father-in-law. So father-in-law, if you're watching, this is your fault. So I used to see him pour like salt over his food, and it's like, it tastes. Before tasting, he's like, it tastes really nice. So what I did was, once I put salt on it, and I was like, it really does accentuate the taste of the food, right? Then I developed the habit of, like what you just said, I haven't even tasted the food, I'm putting salt on it. And it's just like, what am I doing? That is a real bad habit. So yeah, that's some bad habits that we've clearly got.
Yeah. And like, I never knew it was a bad habit until my wife picked up on it and said, you haven't tasted it one. It's perfectly fine. And you're the only one that's doing it. Yeah. And then obviously, you know, married to a doctor, she's probably saying all of these, you know, buzzwords and stuff like that. So bad habits, we all have bad habits, right?
Yeah, exactly. So let's talk about why, though. Let's talk about what forms a habit. So you have first the cue and the trigger, right? So you had food put in front of you, or I woke up, right? That's the cue essentially. And you putting salt on it, that's the, what do you call it? It's the crave, right? And the crave that you have is that you want to accentuate the flavorings of the food, right? Whilst for me, the crave is I want to wake up. I want to have coffee and wake my body up. So the responses we have without thinking, that's habitual, is that you pour salt on your food whilst I go and make the coffee. And this is where it's important for a habit to form. It's the reward we're looking for. So you're looking for, when you're in the toilet, just flicking, it's the dopamine hits you're getting. It's the dopamine hits. And when you're putting salt and that food tastes really good, it's dopamine. And for me, when I get that coffee and that I'm alert now, dopamine rush. So you have to remember, so there's key steps in forming that habit. And that's really important to understand, because whether you want to strengthen a habit or you want to break a habit, you have to know which of the two steps you need to work on. So yeah, that's the formation of a habit.
So I think another way to describe it, someone said this to me the other day, is put the science aside. He said, look at habits like rivers, right? And the river has a particular channel it flows through, right? And the more times you do the same habit again and again and again, right? The channel gets deeper and deeper. But if you want to change that habit into, let's say, a good one, or you want to do something different, because the channel is so deep with lots of water, imagine changing that. It doesn't happen instantly, right? It takes long time to re-guide that channel to make that deeper again. So habits, we talk about bad ones. What do you think are good habits? Or like habits that I will say helped you get through medical school, get through foundation training, do well at work?
So habits, what's that famous book, Atomic Habits, by
James Clear,
exactly. So he's got this thing of like, he says where habits are like compounding interest, right? He uses that. And it's quite interesting how he talks about it. So small things, his best example is this, and I really love it. So say you're on a plane going from LA to New York, right? And it says something like, if you were to have the wrong angle by, I think, 3 or something meters or yards or whatever, right? Over the course of the journey, like you've only angled it a tiny bit, right? You'd end up in Washington rather than New York. And what he's trying to say is that over time, habits take you to a completely different destination. So that's really important to understand, because what does that mean? That means that things don't happen overnight. And he's got this great example, right? If you want to say lose weight, become hench, muscular, whatever, you going to the gym on day one won't make you hench the next day. Going for 6 months and suddenly things change. If you want to eat healthy, you having vegetables on day one doesn't change anything if you have pizza and everything the next day, right? It's about staying consistent, turning up, and then the results are seen a lot later, right?
So I think saying that before I forget is what people and what I've read is you can turn motivation to habit. So the gym example, you want to go gym to be a healthier lifestyle, you want to get big, you want to lose weight, you want to increase your stamina, whatever, right? If you rely on motivation alone, you may not be as successful, because some days you wake up, you can't be asked. You have a busy day at work, you can't do. But if you turn that activity or that thing into habit, where like, as soon as I finish work, I'm going to do this. Or as soon as I work, I'm going to wake up, I'm going to do a certain run. That becomes a habit, and you do it irrespective of the motivation because your brain is just kind of tricked into doing it.
Exactly. There's the thing of friction, right? So reduce friction for you performing whatever it is. So I know a lot of people that say they're corporate workers, and when they finish work, they go home in their gym gear.
Yeah.
They don't even go home. They change into their gym gear, and they're on the way home, they go to the gym. Because they've changed already. There's no friction. It's a case of, I'm already changed. Let me go to the gym. And then I'll go straight home. So it's about friction as well. So good habits that I formed, which I still carry with me. The number one, like you've seen it, and it's the one thing I recommend to everyone, is my physical diary that I have. It's a to-do list. I plan my week out in advance. I like to get tasks done, to like have a job, make sure family's good, have good downtime, run a startup, etc. For me, what's important is organization, right? So I need to know when I've got certain windows of time, certain tasks that need to be done, certain urgent tasks, and then I can prioritize and do them. So me having foresight is a really good habit, and it's a habit now because I just sit on a Sunday usually, plan the week out, or if I haven't planned the next day, it's a habit for me to just sit the night before, have a look at the next day and be like, what have I got? If it's blank, I'll do it. And it's a habitual thing. I can't go to sleep without doing it. So yeah, that's a very important habit that I would say I've developed and I would pass on wholeheartedly. What about you? What's a good habit you've got?
So I think a good habit is, obviously some things are habits, some aren't. I think one habit I'm implementing, trying to make do, is the one task a day thing. So irrespective of what happens in a day, I aim to have one important task that needs to be completed. Rather than a never-ending to-do list, right? So let's say today it's come here, record videos or whatever, right? That's my most important thing for today. And I make it a habit to have and identify one at the beginning of the day and ensure it's done by the end of the day. And then carrying it forward. And I think it's a compounding effect, right? If every day you're doing something important, you get more done compared to having an open canvas of saying, okay, let's say you have a to-do list of 5 different things. Out of those 5 lists, I'm going to be like, okay, this is the one that I need to make sure I do. And that's my habit. I need to make sure I do it. And in essence, most of the time you get complete most of them. But imagine there was a never-ending list, or you do this and that, right? So that's something, I think I learned that after Ali Abdaw actually, building the habit of one daily task.
That's a pretty good habit. It ties in with, is it Jeff Bezos' comment on making only a small handful of big decisions a day, because over time you've made like a million important decisions over time, and it's had a big impact, rather than trying to get yourself into a million different decisions. So that's a really important thing. Okay, so fine. So talking about habits, right? Let's talk a few specific habits now. So let's talk about medical student habits right now. What are some good habits medical students can have?
So a good habit for medical students is they want to learn. They're curious to learn, and they want to learn everything about everything, right? So they will always over prepare, or they'll start banging out the lectures, the slides, they'll do a lot of background read, right? It's a good habit, right? Another good habit is sometimes there's kind of the habit of kind of making notes or working with your friends and colleagues and stuff like that, and kind of reviewing it after a certain time period. But I think the biggest habits are like the revision time. It seems medics always have a certain structure they've developed over the years, and they stick to it like glue. And that may be a good thing or a bad thing, but think about us. I think for the last few years, when it came to exam season, we had a particular habit or a particular way of doing things, and we didn't err too much from it. So I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but that was from habit, right? You just, exam mode, what do? You figure out what needs to be done, you create this timetable, and then you make a habit. You're going to bang out this question in the morning, then do this, then that, right? It's habits more than consciously doing it, right?
So I think that's really important during revision, because you want to remove the element of having to make a decision. You know it must be done, and you just want to just do it without friction. I think one important habit that I would sort of recommend to develop is asking the question of why and how much. So in med school, right, you don't need to know everything about everything, right? You need to know, why do you need to know that, all right? And how much do you need to know of that topic, that area, that category, or whatever. So I think that's quite important to develop at med school. And I think to develop a habit of forming a personal timetable. I think that's important. I think every institution gives you a timetable, but you need to have your own personal timetable, right? A timetable of when you're going to be in, when you're studying, when is downtime. Develop a habit of downtime to look after yourself. So downtime is important. So those habits are quite important. Productivity habits wise, what's a good productivity habit for you?
So before we go on, so the habits talked about called self-care. So it's exercising, relaxing, meditating, eating healthy. And I think when thinking about habits, it's important to be intentional.
Yeah.
Meaning, like, you can't have all the best habits in the world. There's always, like, 7 habits of the highly successful rich people, whatever, right? There's always all of this stuff. I think be intentional in your habits. Like, okay, I'm not going to bang out gym or whatever. I'm going to make it a conscious effort to eat healthy every single day or whatever, and work on that. I think consistency is key in creating habits, right?
Yeah. So it aligns with that saying, isn't it? Where so habits are often outcome based, right? So you just said go to the gym to become hench. Rather make the habit as a part of your identity. So it's more like I'm not a person who's going to publish a book. I'm a writer, so I write every day. So it becomes a part of your personality. But yeah, that's an important way. That's an important way to look at it.
Be intentional in the habits you're creating. Because I know we're going to give loads of habits, like do this, do that, and then everyone's going to try to do it, and they're going to fail, right? True. So find out of these habits which are the most important or have the biggest impact in your life, right? If it's for you want to make a habit of healthy eating and it has the biggest impact, focus on that and be consistent. If it's you want to start reading, focus on that. If you want to start going to the gym and exercising, focus on that. Moving on to like productivity, I think habits that are very important are engineered breaks. So as medics, you revise hours on end and everyone's banging it out, right? And no one's taking like proper, healthy, legitimate breaks, right? Get into the habit of taking breaks every so often. Attention span is limited. After a while, you lose it, right? So get into the habit. After I've done X, Y, and Z, I'm going to take a break. Or after half an hour to 45 minutes, I'm going to take a break, right? Yeah. And I don't know if you've seen a curve where it's like after 30 minutes, it goes down, right? But if you take a break, it goes back up again, right? Yeah. By taking breaks every 30 to 45 minutes, you keep that attention span going. Absolutely. So engineer breaks, I think, is a big habit for productivity.
Absolutely. Great habit to have. All right. Next habit we'll talk about is in the category of happiness, right? So we talked about this in the last episode as well, actually, and the practice of gratitude and what it does for happiness. And we talked about how if we look at the things that we have, sometimes we actually have a lot more than a certain other individual, right? I posted a whole reel and TikTok and everything on this, right? And gratitude allows inward reflection, to be grateful for the things that we have. And it creates that sense of happiness. How do you practice gratitude? How do you actually physically do it? Because do you sit there going, great?
So, funnily enough, after recording that last episode about gratitude, I've been more conscious of it. And then I think the other day I was in the car and I was trying to be grateful for the things we have, right? And it's stuff like going in my head for like, so what was that? I think I was going into work, right? And it's in the morning and it's bare long to wake up and I'm driving, right? And then I thought, let me flip it. Let me be grateful, right? And then I'm thinking, I'm grateful for being a doctor, for having a job, for having a car to travel this far. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? And that kind of flips your mentality, right? Because what I would have done, I would have been bare groggy, grumpy, gone into work, got coffee, whatever, right? But then when you're grateful for it, like, yo, do you know what? I have a job. I'm a doctor. I got through medical school. Yeah, exactly. I'm getting paid to help people. Then it changes, right? So I think when you're doing an action that you may not necessarily like, maybe practice gratitude in that moment in time.
That's the thing, isn't it? It's like it's the whole reframing concept. Like you just said, I have to work, and instead you're turning it into, I get to work. Because not everyone gets to work. Not everyone gets to.
I'm looking for work, right?
Exactly. So then, did you feel that you are a lot more upbeat and
like I felt more positive? Because now you're grateful, right? And now you're like, you don't take it for granted. Now you're conscious of it. And then human nature, you cannot not be thankful for it and not be positive about it, right? Because then you think, okay, do you know what? If I wasn't doing this, I would have been stuck at home searching for jobs or looking for jobs or have no job security. And then you're thinking, all the people that lost their jobs during COVID, how they have struggled. And then you go into some mad mentality, right? So I think it's very good, especially for someone like me. Sometimes I see the negatives in things and then you're like, okay, gratitude I think it's a very, very powerful thing, actually.
It is powerful. It is powerful. It seems abstract to people, but I think you put it in a really nice way to frame it. Is as soon as you feel like, oh, why do I have to do this, or I have to do this, I'm like, I get to do this, and that is incredible.
So think of how many people. I think as medics we get a bit disillusioned, perhaps for the right reasons, about being a doctor working in the system, but at the same time, being a bit grateful. There's no harm in it. It will help you get through the day per se, right?
Exactly. No, I agree. So that's a great habit to form. Another habit you wrote in the sort of notes for this show is smiling. What does smiling do? What does that mean?
So I was reading about it, right? So one of the easiest way to uplift someone or make someone happy or spread positivity is smiling, right? As humans, we're social beings, social creatures. We live in communities and whatever, right? When you see someone else smiling at you, you just feel happy. You feel a level of warmth, right? And to be smiling, you can't feel pissed and smile, right? Something happens, right? But smiling is contagious. You smile someone, even if someone's awkward, they'll do an awkward smile, but they'll smile back at you, or they'll do something, right? And then they'll get some sort of a dopamine hit or whatever, and they'll spread it. And it's a very easy way of spreading positivity.
You're right. You know what? On this topic of smiling and making it a habit, right? So as I said, we're social creatures, and you know what? Smiling. If you're habitually forming this habit of, you know what, spreading a smile when you talk to someone,
when you see someone,
you're being upbeat about it. What happens is you become a person who is likable, that people want to spend time with, and it fosters good teamwork. It fosters good sort of culture in the workplace, especially. So I find that if you're sort of grumpy, you never smile at anyone, people don't really want to be next to you. People don't want to ask you questions because you feel you might not snap at them, but it's from the outside you're like, you might snap at me today. Let's not talk to him. But I find that smiling, it gives you a really approachable persona, and as you said, it helps yourself. I think I read a study or something like that. I'm sure there's some study out there that suggests something like smiling lifts your morale, boosts your energy levels, etc., etc. Just have a quick Google. I will double check that, or I'll cut this bit out. Okay. So the last one to talk about right now. It is on the topic of in the workplace. So you've written in the notes, so to sort of say thank you and kindness, essentially, you've summed up here. Tell us a little bit about kindness and what it means to be consciously aware of that for a habit. Because why isn't everyone kind? What is the habit that you're trying to say here?
So this is, I would say, very particular in our industry, in our profession. It's very pressured. It's very fast moving. A lot of things happen, right? And let's use the example of thank you, saying thank you to someone, right? So if you have to kind of consciously always say thank you, when someone does something for you, it's a bit long. It's effort. We need to preserve as much brain power as possible, really, right? But if you get into the habit, as soon as someone hands you something or does something, if you can subconsciously be like thank you, right? And not having to worry about or make that conscious decision, even when you're upset or moody, you will notice some people by nature are like thank you, right? Like they'll say it in a way where like you feel uplifted. But
is it sincere?
So I don't know if it comes across as sincere or not, or if in building this habit you get into the mode of where like you want to consciously thank someone for what they've done for you or helped you, right? And you want to make a habit of gratitude and thankfulness. Maybe that's a better way of saying it. So get into the habit of appreciating your colleagues' works and efforts.
So on the topic of conscious kindness, you're talking about that essentially. So I think humans as nature, like we are kind. I don't think we like to see harm come onto people and things like that. So kindness is a thing. But I think you're right. In such a high-paced environment, stressful, what happens is we can become not so kind, and we can become snappy and all sorts. But I think consciously developing that habit of awareness, so where you're like, oh, I'm under pressure, I feel like I'm gonna snap at people, and I think holding that back and saying, you know what, thank you for calling me, thank you for referring this patient to me, you're welcome, please can I ask you, etc. I find that it helps actually.
Getting into the habit of doing that, right? So when you do a habit, right, so we think of habit as things that are done subconsciously, but when you start to build a good habit, you have to do it consciously, intentionally. Right? when you are young or whenever you're starting to build a habit, right, you consciously think about it, you intentionally do it to the point that then it becomes a habit, right? So if you're someone that may be a bit grumpy or you feel as an individual, you're not thankful to your colleagues and peers, maybe you get into the intentional habit creation of, I'm going to be a bit more grateful. I'm going to take that minute break and appreciate their efforts to the point where it becomes second nature for you.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
So agree with that. I think building good habits to be appreciative, more thankful in the workspace, it does good. It does more good than harm, right? Do you know what I mean? Especially in the profession we're in.
So what about bad habits? Bad habits. So I'll give you one bad habit. I think it's a habit. So when, as doctors, as medics, when the referrals and everything climb and they're at high levels, the habit is that we become quite antagonistic, negative, like very rash sometimes with our colleagues and that. What about, so that, would you agree that's a bad habit? Because I feel like they don't purposely do that. They subconsciously suddenly become a bit more rash and sort of a bit more stern with their colleagues. Do you feel it's a habit? Would you define that as a habit?
It's a habit or not, but I would say maybe it's happened on multiple occasions and they've done it and it became a habit. So I don't think they intended to do that or they set out to be a habit. It just happened again and again and again. And that's the response they've associated with it. And that's the response they've built out to do. And it's now become a habit. So even if they don't mean it, even if they're having an amazing day, because it's habit, that kind of kicks in and kind of has that attitude.
So let's talk about a little bit about breaking habits and how do you break a habit? Like what's the best way to break a habit, do you feel? Have you broken any habits?
When I used to kind of come to East London, for some reason, it was like, I need to get a kebab. It became a habit. Even though it was basically, even though I wasn't hungry, it was like, I'm here, I might as well get a kebab, right? It's like, you came all this way, why not get a kebab, right? Like a dirty, greasy East London type kebab, right? And
Summarizing my ends very well, okay.
It became a habit, right? And that's a bad habit. Because obviously it's not the best thing, whatever, right? So breaking a habit, I think you need to understand that this is a bad habit. You have to identify, what I'm doing is bad, and being very intentional. I think when something is subconscious and you're doing without thinking, being intentional about breaking it is very important. And I think slow and steady and doing it slowly and kind of trying to be consistent.
So I think my one tip on breaking a habit is creating and removing friction. I think that's the best way to put it. So if you are someone who has the bad habit of, you come home from work, you want to go gym, but you slump and you just can't be bothered and you end up not going to the gym, miss it a lot, put out your gym gear, put it out in front of you, or before you go to work, leave it in your bag ready or something like that. So remove friction. Or if it's something that, for example, the example you gave of salt on food, create friction. Don't put the salt in a shaker. Put it in leave it in a cupboard. So if you really want salt, you have to go and like rummage through the cupboards to get it. So removing and creating purposeful, intentful friction is a good way to break and create good/bad habit.
So one other thing you can do is replacing habits, right? So you replace one habit for another habit, or you replace a bad habit for a good one. So example is, every time you come to East London, because you're so accustomed to buying a kebab on your way home, you replace it with, I'm going to buy something to eat, but instead of that, I'm going to buy a salad. So you still have the action of, the crave, the reward and everything, but you're replacing what it is. And over time, every time you come to East London, instead of getting a kebab, you probably pick up a salad.
Unhealthy drink more like, okay, fine.
Yeah, you know what I mean, right? Or something like that. But so there's the thing of replacing habits, right? If you know you're going to have to do something, there's no point going cold turkey. Do the next best thing, or get a smaller kebab or something less fatty or greasy. 100%. The other thing I've just thought of now is accountability. So accountability, I think it's a productivity hack. It's not just only to do with habits. Is if you are trying to build a good habit, find a partner or someone that will hold you accountable. So let's say you're like, bro or whatever, do you mind, keeping me accountable? I want to basically go to the gym every other night after I come back from work. And I just want you to hold me accountable. So when you have accountability, when you have to answer to someone or they're kind of questioning you and pulling you up on it, you're more likely to stick to that habit and form it. Because imagine you want to do something, you've got no one to own up to and you have no one responsible for you, right? You're not going to really do it sometimes.
100%. No, completely agree with that. Not got much to add on to that. What's So talking about the junior doctors who are starting, right, and the doctors who are moving into F2 or whatever, what are some good habits to have on the ward, would you say?
A good one is looking after yourself. So whatever that entails, but like eating all right, drinking well, using the toilet, making sure you take a break. If you get overwhelmed, take a step back. So all of that type of stuff.
So you self-care, basically.
Self-care, yeah. So essentially,
yeah, so you've said self-care. I think, okay, so just to not reiterate the same thing, I think one tip I would give is organization at work. I think if you're organized as a junior doctor, it helps you go really far. So like having your job list organized, having your own calls organized, having your shifts organized, having a plan, basically. I think if you have things organized, you'll find that your life as a junior doctor is a lot easier than having, let's say your job list is on 10 different pieces of paper. Yeah. Trust me, that's a nightmare. I probably did that in my early days, but it's a nightmare. So I think good habits to develop is things that contribute towards you being organized. Any good habits that you want to develop going forwards as a entrepreneur right now?
I want to start listening to a lot more podcasts because I listen to it, then I start listening to Spotify, whatever. So I want to get into the habit of every time I'm traveling, instead of opening Spotify, I want to open up the podcast app for the iPhone, right? And listen to that instead of music, because I don't gain anything from music, right? Whereas from the podcast, I gain a lot of stuff that helps us grow and develop. Yeah. So getting into that habit.
Nice. So I think for one habit I want to develop is, I don't know if this is a good thing or bad thing. I want to develop a little power of saying no sometimes now. I feel like, so we've all got limited bandwidth, let's face it. No one has infinite amount of time. You don't have more time than me. I don't have more time than you, right? And how we spend it is vital and critical. Sometimes I feel I say yes to every single meeting that comes into my inbox, every single LinkedIn message I get. And it's hard because, you're also inquisitive about the opportunity or what is it that you can work with and collaborate with. But at the same time, you're like, oh, I could spend that time growing Peerr a little bit more, or having this important task completed tonight for Peerr. What do you think about that?
Saying that, remember that book, Derek Sivers, about hell yes or hell no? Yeah. So this is a good example. It's when you're young, when you're junior in your career, say yes to as many opportunities until you find your passion, what you're really motivated by, and you become more senior, you're starting to double down on a start on a side hustle or business. Then it's basically, if you're iffy about saying yes to something, don't bother about it, say no. Unless it's something that's, hell yes, like I'm excited, I want to do it, then say yes to that, right? So it's basically, let's say someone wants to meet you for the growth of the company, whatever, and you're a bit iffy about it. As soon as you get that bit of doubt and you think, okay, there's something else I can be doing that's more important, say no. But if someone, let's say, if Elon Musk emails you, say, I want to meet you, Ams.
The hell yes, man.
You know what I mean? So you don't need to think about it. So you're at that transition phase now, right? Where you're still not there where you can just say hell yes and hell no, because you're still growing and developing. Exactly, yeah. But there'll come a time where you're very selective with your time, right?
Because I was always there. So like you said, in the early days, finding my feet, finding the career I love, the sector that I love, it was a yes to everything. Someone wanted me to design something for them. I didn't even care how much they were going to pay or if they were going to pay. It's a yes because I wanted to work with them, develop myself. But obviously, like you said, I'm in that transition phase now, and it's quite hard. It's quite hard to transition, I feel. So I think
that's the advice he gives. And I always say this about how to discover opportunities, put yourself out there, say yes to as many things. Exactly. And then as you become more senior, I don't know if you remember Reid Hoffman, who's a co-founder of LinkedIn. They were expanding a thing in China or whatever, and there was a decision, does he go there or not, catch a flight? And he was like, impact and like the decisions I'm going to make there, is it valuable, is it worth it? And then when a few other things came up, like you can do this, you can do that, you can do that, then he was like, I'm not going to go. Because he wants that one definitive thing. If I'm going to go there, what is that one thing I'm going to just impact for? So I think at your junior career, say yes to as many opportunities. As you become more senior, as you double down, be selective. Exactly. And then get to a point where it's a hell yes or a hell no.
No, I get it completely. All right then. That's it from habits in terms of from me. What about from you? Any other remarks that you have?
I think habits are important, and like you say, we do them so unconsciously, so routine, that do end up being who we are as individuals. Bad habits can be broken, despite how hard they are, but good habits are what makes the difference.
That's it from us today. Let us know some good habits that you have in the comments below, and how you've actually also broken down bad habits and how you've developed good habits. See you next week otherwise.